The epic and truth-telling film Sound of Freedom that depicts the horrors of child sex trafficking.
How long you been doing this?
12 years.
How do you do it?
Breaks $150 million. But it goes much deeper.
It's true.
Because it exposes the villains that are still allowed to run wild.
Por ponerlos en la frontera de Tijuana.
Because of the current administration's weak border policies.
Fuck.
I'm Jazz Berganzo, and this...
Please disperse! Nothing to see here, please!
...is what's next. Hey, what's up, everyone? Jazz Berganzo. What's next? Your daily dose, common sense, facts, and salt. Of course, this is the weekend edition. The Sound of Freedom. The movie with Jim Caviezel that depicts a true story regarding the sex child trafficking industry, the horrors of it, and what one man intends to do about it. The movie just broke $150 million. To me, that's not a surprise, only because of how much interest this movie has gotten and how many eyes have been woken and truly opened up because of it. But it goes deeper. There's a deeper problem to this because seeds have been planted prior to this movie, prior to this administration. But being that we are in the current administration and 6.5 million and counting illegals have flooded over to the border, how many of them you think are kids who are dealing with sex trafficking in the U.S.? Yeah. And here we go. This comes out of Breitbart, exclusive for Brian Lonergan. Sound of Freedom villains are enabled by dementia's border policies. They all tie together. At a time of year when movies are normally dominated by big-budget blockbusters, this has been the summer of Sound of Freedom. The crowdfunded, low-budget film about child trafficking, has greatly overachieved at the box office, bringing in more than 10 times its $14.5 million production cost and even beating out Disney's Indiana Jones and a Dial of Douchebaggery in its first week. Then again, I'm not surprised. It's geriatric indie. While the establishment media has been reluctant to acknowledge the Sound of Freedom's success as well as the prevalence of child trafficking, it has also stubbornly refused to acknowledge the elephant in the room. The immigration policies championed by the anti-border left, implemented by dementia, have greatly enabled the sinister trade depicted in the Sound of Freedom that profits off of buying and selling of kids. Fact. The treachery is compounded by the fact that these policies are sold to the American public as compassion and acted on behalf of the children. Nothing could be farther from the truth. There are numerous examples of how the actions of the White House have made it to human trafficking cartel's de facto business partner. A leaked memo from the U.S. Customs Borders Protection Agency as of May 31st, the federal government ended familiar DNA testing on the southern border. Such testing has been an integral tool in stopping the cartel practice of renting young children to clients who pose as children's parents to gain passage into the U.S. Gee, who would have thought that was happening? For an administration that claims to care about migrant children to have an operational control of the border, this is the most illogical policy imaginable. Yet Team Biden enacted the policy anyway, just cause. With little scrutiny from our corporate media and supposed to be a check on the government, but increasingly acts as its propaganda arm. Again, more facts. Catch and release is another policy that no doubt popular with the cartel kingpins who are stockpiling cash faster than Tony Montana ever did. Releasing illegal aliens into the U.S. On the honor system that they will show up at hearing months or years later, the future creates exactly the kind of shadows the child trafficking racket needs to flourish in the U.S. Pictures speak 1,000 words. The more migrant floods into U.S. immigration system, the higher of the probability that the child trafficking can get through undetected. If a flow of illegal aliens under Donald Trump was a garden hose, under Joe Dementia, it's turned into a tsunami. Government data shows that since Trump's last year in 2020, CBP encounters with foreign nationals in the country illegally increased more than 400% as of 2022. How many children are living in quasi-slavery in the U.S. today thanks to such recklessness? The situation has gotten so bad that even Dementia's top Homeland Security official admitted that the policies are making problems worse. Blas Nunes Nieto and Secretary Alexander Mayorkas, I don't know why this guy still have a job, I don't know why he has not been impeached. Deputy for the Border Immigration Policy, recently lamented on how the catch and release enrichment the human smuggling cartels, part of the lure to migrants, Nunes Nieto said. It is illegal aliens that the immigration court system eligible for employment authorization. Again, policies sold to the public as humanitarian acts, compassion, are served to empower cartels and ensure even more human trafficking. The Trafficking Victim Protection Reauthorization Act, TVPRA, sounds good on paper, but in many cases turned into a conduit for trafficking children. Unaccompanied aliens children, UACs, are not Mexican, are ultimately turned over to the Department of Health and Human Services, which has a track record of losing contact with migrant children released from its custody and releasing them to sponsors under the investigation of human trafficking. Gee, but how does that happen? The government's so transparent, honest. An uninformed observer, could be forgiven to think that cartels in the U.S. federal government and partners are child trafficking operation, with the cartels handling transportation of children to the American border and the feds taking custody and distributing the children to clients in the U.S. interior. In the light of status quo, it is particularly galling to hear Mayorkas preposterous claim that taking it to the cartels, yes, we're taking it to them, we're hitting them hard. On the contrary, it's hard to imagine how the cartels could be so successful without him. If you're making pedophiles happy, making them salivate over your policies, I think it's time to push pause and reconsider your policies, Tim Ballard, the real-life hero of Sound of Freedom, said in a recent interview. Our nation should have pushed the pause button on anti-border policies a long time ago. If we cannot take such common sense action to combat a practice as evil and satanic as child trafficking, then we lack the moral authority to lecture the rest of the world on anything else. This does not surprise me. We've had over 6.5 million illegals flood into the border since dementia took office in January of 21. 6.5 million and counting. How many millions of them are children? How many of them are sold to U.S. clientele here in the U.S.? Funny how when you had Epstein, who didn't kill himself, had his little island going on, his lovely plane rides going back and forth, with some of the most elite in Hollywood and most elite in politics, and yet nothing. Silence. Outside of Ghislaine Maxwell, who got 20 years, she's, yes, she knew Epstein, and yes, she probably dated him or what have you, but supposed little black book that she had that was going to blow the doors off the entire operation never came to be. Somehow memory hold. But that's neither here nor there. Falls in the same way with the border. Sound of Freedom exposed the demonic demonism regarding the horrors of child sex trafficking. And it's going on right now. This is a movie that Disney sat on for 5 years. Yes, Disney Woke, the pedo company, sat on for 5 years. Practically completed until they sold it to Angel Studios. Because they knew that if this movie was exposed, or if this movie was shown, it would expose all the evilness that somehow Disney's now currently portraying. But this is a movie that wasn't going to do anything. It's only made a $14.5 million production, and it's not going to do anything except $150 million and counting. And with that being said, I'm Jazz Berganzo. This is What's Next. Want to see more like this? Please leave a comment below. Like it, share it, subscribe to it, hit the notification bell so you guys never miss a thing. And we'll see you next time. Peace.